Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a good lunch. If not a long one, at least a healthy one. I am very thrilled to be introducing the last part of our summit. And this is really where we get to talk about our emerging and transforming industries. We are going to get to hear about fisheries and forestry manufacturing and tourism and small business and climate resilience and food and farming. And I think that we're going to find is what I like to say is that we're really exploring a lot of the industries that have always worked well in our region. It's just kind of a 21st century way of doing it. Less extractive, more equitable, and everything we used to do, only doing it better. So we're going to start with the fisheries discussion, and we have Anna Newman and Ashley Bellis here. They're going to talk about Fisherman's Dock connects, connecting buyers and sellers directly and keeping catch and profits local. So Ashley and Anna, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anna, you go first.
Okay, so I'm Anna Newman. I'm the harbor master for the Noyo Harbor District down along the Mendocino coast. And this past summer, the Harbor District put on an event called Fish Markets. We had 6 different fish markets, and essentially the fishermen would all come to the same dock and sell their catch directly to the customers, those local in our community. And then in conjunction with that, I also had vendors come into the park, and they would vend arts and crafts and wearables. I also had hot food and live music. So I tried to work on building up a bit larger of an event. The inspiration for this really came from a previous employer. I've worked as a commercial fisherman and fishmonger for the last 6 years while I was in school. And I really learned and saw how the Fort Bragg community loved to eat fish and how excited they were to make connections with local fishermen. So my previous employer was Heather Sears with Princess Seafood, and I used to sell off the boat with her. So we would go out and fish, and then the next day we would scrub the boat totally clean and then do direct sales to customers. I thought this was a really amazing just thing to do the direct sales. The customers got to get fresh local catch. They supported small businesses. They knew their dollars stayed local. They understood that their quality of fish was going to be high. It was like a very direct and great way for them to support their local community and to make sure that their food was of the highest quality. And then for the fishermen, especially for me, we would often sell our catch at a much greater rate than we would if we were to do selling to a larger fish buyer. So salmon, for example, this season was selling at $5.50 a pound to the fish buyers versus off the docks, you could sell at $10 to $12 per pound for a whole fish. So you're more than doubling your profits there, which was great, especially as a lowly deckhand. It was my favorite to make more money. So that's kind of where that idea came together. And then she ended up transitioning from off the boat sales into a fish market. So having a retail shop where she sold. And there the community really came out to support, and they were always asking questions. Who caught this fish? Where was it from? When was it caught? All of that really important stuff that we love to hear when we're buying fish. We had a lot of great successes, and then a lot of challenges came through this project. And all of it kind of revolves around participation for me, kind of under that heading as I was thinking about talking today. So some of our biggest successes was that the fishermen were able to sell fish. And for the most part, all of the boats that participated would sell out at every event that we had, with the exception of 2 species. So crab didn't sell very well. Crab in our community is a wintertime like luxury. It's Christmas crab, it's Thanksgiving crab. I never understood this growing up in Southern California, and then I moved here and I really understood how important the winter crab fishery was. So in the springtime, even when I was working at Princess, we just don't sell spring crab. And then petrale and Dover, those like flat fishes, didn't sell very well. And I really think this is because the fishermen sell in the round. sorry, my phone is ringing. It's going to ring twice. There's no way to stop it. It's just life. So the flatfishes, Dover and Petrale, folks weren't used to seeing those fishes in the round. And I think they just really suffered from the fact that they're not a beautiful, bright red, orange rockfish. They're not a lovely, like lingcod that looks really cool and blue. They're just kind of drab and flat and kind of slimy. So those fish we kind of struggled on the sales with, although people really enjoyed once they've eaten it. So it wasn't a lack of quality. It was just I'm not sure. The challenges were also very interesting. So one of the most interesting challenges that we seem to come across, and I'm not even sure if this was just challenge or a byproduct, but when the markets were very slow, so not that many people coming through the park where the vendors were and the docks felt very empty, we had phenomenal sales. Everyone was making tons of money. All of my art vendors were very happy. The food was selling out. The band would get lots of great tips. The fishermen would always sell out, but the event itself felt barren. There wasn't that like massive people having fun and dancing and all of that jazz. But we had the right folks there, the folks that were spending money to make it profitable for everyone, which was interesting. And then at events that were very crowded, lots of people in the park, folks dancing, kind of lots of folks milling about and having like a social time, we didn't sell well at all. So the vendors wouldn't sell well, and then the fishermen aren't selling well too. So I think it was just the customers we were bringing in. The slower events tended to be more local folks that were there to spend money and support, versus the busier events were more tourists that were there to have a good time and recreate and not so much make that financial contribution. So that was just something that I didn't really expect to occur. You always assume more people, more money, and that wasn't true for us. The other interesting part about the participation came on the fisherman side versus the vendor side. So the community of fishermen really struggled getting fish on set dates. So my first few ones, March, April, May, where the wind blew, it was absolutely atrocious, 30-knot winds. Like there was hardly any fish for us to sell because they didn't have that opportunity to fish. So that was a struggle. And then I also planned a fish market 2 days after salmon season had opened. And this one, I'm just embarrassed because I know better than this. But the fishermen didn't want to come in and sell fish because the fish were biting. And the lost opportunities and the lost revenues by sitting on the dock for the day greatly outweighed their benefit at selling at a higher rate. So even though they had salmon and they were on board, they didn't want to come in to participate because they didn't want to miss that fishing opportunity. So that was kind of an interesting one, and I should have known better on that. The other aspect of my participation was from my art and my food vendors. So they wanted very long lead times to be able to set up and make their, tie-dyed t-shirts, and the indigo vats had to sit for times, and candle making and food and shopping and all of this prep. They really wanted to schedule things very far out, which is easy to do on the shore side of it. But then on the fisherman side of it, it was also very hard. So there was a lot of like conflicts on, how do you bridge those two things? Two people want direct opposites. Like it's very difficult for us to find the middle ground. Coming into our next season, I'm just trying to meet those challenges, making sure that I understand the lead times that the fishermen want, as well as the lead times that the craft vendors want, and try to find a way to meet in the middle on something that's so spread apart. But overall, that was the Noyo Harbor Fish Market project. We're excited for next season, and I'm excited to hear what Ashley has to say. And thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you, Anna. That was awesome. Congratulations on getting that kind of up off the ground, because we're just in the talking discussion portion of that right now. So kudos to you guys. Let's see, screen sharing. I put together a power or a page. I don't know if I can do this. So sorry if this is a little repetitive, or if it takes us back a little bit too much. We're talking about here up in Humboldt doing a dockside market. This would be situated in Eureka. My name is Ashley. I'm the owner of Ashley Seafood and the co-owner of the fishing vessel Guero with my husband. I'm a Humboldt County lifer. I'm a mom, I'm a fishwife, and our goals are to really kind of help strengthen the relationship with commercial fishing industry, incorporate seafood into our action plans for emergencies, and to break down barriers and communication with our commercial fishing industry. I have a strict there are no stupid questions policy for commercial fishing questions, so please feel free to ask anything. To let you guys all know what a dockside market is, it's a place where multiple fishermen can come up and set together as a temporary food facility permit, sell retail, sell processed catch direct to consumers under one umbrella policy. It was started back in 2015 with the Pacific to Plate Act, also known as AB 226. Our vision here in Eureka is an event-friendly location centralized in Mataket Plaza near the Fisherman's Terminal for easy forklift and hoist access. And this would build opportunities for fishermen across our county from Shelter Cove to Yurok. We can't exclude our surf smelt fishermen. Why we need a dockside market is for more local seafood to be distributed through our community. I ran the Captain Zach's Crab House for the last 3 years, and I do the farmers market in Arcata. And it's the main question that I get every single day is where to buy local seafood. Given we have an amazing port here, it's a surprising question. This would provide equal opportunities for vendors to sell and get acquainted with customers. Woodley Island is a phenomenal location to go out and walk your dog and to meet fishermen, but it can be intimidating, and it can also be, you drive onto the island, that first 2 parking lots that you see, it's likely going to be the ones you pull into and not see what's down at the further end of the dock. So a lot of people do get missed down there. In the summer months, we also see a huge increase of sport boats. These guys hold their slips throughout the year on the island, and that prevents any smaller scale fishermen who's trying to fish to sell to get a slip on Woodley Island. And Woodley Island is the only marina that allows dockside sales. So this would give them an opportunity to get their foot in the door and start their own path in this commercial fishing industry. And it would give us a presence in our rapidly growing community. We have such exciting things like wind energies and the fish farm coming in, but these do pose an issue within our industry. So getting our commercial fishermen a foot in the door with direct marketing might help a little bit weigh the issue. What we hope to accomplish is to build a foundation for our commercial fishermen to do a direct market. Access more access locations for consumers to shop. I can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody who is walking their baby in a carriage on the dock. And to build a community awareness for our working port. There's a lot of people in our community that don't even know that Woodley Island exists. Our goals are to negotiate a lease for Hoist 2 at the Fisherman's Terminal with the City of Eureka. Adequate cold storage and processing infrastructure for our community. And I can't express how much we need cold storage. Just this last few weeks, we've had over 70,000 pounds of albacore sitting in Humboldt Bay with nowhere to go. I hope that we can gain funding through grants and fundraising to help offset safety equipment and training costs. network with organizations to help distribute food through crisis and emergencies, and safe gear storage from vandalism and, unfortunately, human feces. And thank you. That is all I have. Sorry.
I think then it is back to me. Thank you so much. I was just super excited about this and anxious to hear more. And then I got distracted and forgot that I also have a job on this. So we're really happy to hear from you. Now we are going to be moving on to our forestry, manufacturing, and building presentation. We do have, we're anticipating maybe some audio issues with this. I know Christy Prescott, who's one of our presenters, and Ryan are both going to be on phones. Great information. And so we're hoping that the audio works out, because I'm really excited about this presentation about forest health and resilient communities and turning risks into opportunities. So Christy and Ryan, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Ryan Heights. I'm an Economic Development Coordinator with Humboldt County, and I'm here to talk a little bit about CalForest Works and to introduce Christy Prescott. CalForest Works Alliance, I'm sorry, my notes here. The CalForest Works Alliance is an alliance between the Humboldt County and the U.S. Forest Service. Currently, the initial area of focus for the alliance includes Humboldt County and Del Norte counties, as well as portions of the Siskiyou, Trinity, and Mendocino counties, in conjunction with the greater area around the Six Rivers National Forest. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Christy Prescott, social scientist at Six Rivers National Forest, to talk a little bit about the work that she's been doing there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yay, perfectly clear.
Oh, okay. I'm getting feedback on my end. Oh, goodness. Okay, well, thank you for having me here. I'm sorry, I can hear everything a lag, like 2 minutes later.
That's such a bummer. You sound perfect for us. Maybe take off your headphones so you don't hear.
Okay, is this working? Oh.
Yeah, you can just turn the volume down and you'll be good to go.
Okay. Okay. I'm really impressed with the initiatives moving forward in the Redwood region. I'm so sorry. Can we pass and go to another presentation so I can figure this out?
You know, Christy, we're not going to interrupt you. If you want to just keep talking, but without listening to yourself, we'll be good.
Okay.
Yeah, nobody's speaking to you. So if you don't have your headphones on,
So if I take, can you hear me if I take my headphones off though?
Yes, you just can't hear you.
So you can
You're
hear
in
me
the same
now?
room, so you're all good.
Oh.
You sound good.
Oh. Okay, I'm really impressed with the initiatives moving forward on the Redwood region coast. I see a lot of overlap and shared interest and opportunities to work together. Before we get started, I'd like to offer my gratitude for being invited to share the work we're engaged in with this community. I would also like to thank Humboldt County's leadership for their recognition of the role our forest infrastructure plays in supporting healthy economies and communities. And I would be remiss if I didn't offer my gratitude to the Forest Service, the Pacific Southwest region, and our National Partnership Office, who are exploring new ways by supporting this project, new ways that the agency can lean in to support our communities and economies. And also would like to thank our partners in the community that have supported the work that we've engaged in thus far to get us to where we are today. Okay, I'd like to take a moment to ask you to reflect upon the morning of September 12th, 2020. If you were living in Humboldt or anywhere in the coastal region between San Francisco and Seattle, by 8 a.m., you realized that this was not a normal day. The eerie red sky we awoke to was better suited for a Martian landscape than the Pacific coast. The air was so encumbered by wildfire smoke that the streetlights in Eureka stayed on well into the afternoon hours. At this time, 3 wildfires started by lightning on August 18th burned on the Six Rivers, Shasta Trinity, and Mendocino National Forest, converging to make one of our country's largest wildfires in U.S. history to date, the August Complex. Fueled by 40-mile-per-hour winds, the August Complex ripped through the upper watersheds of the Mad River and neighboring watersheds. It roared across 20 miles of forest in a single day. By the time the August Complex was declared out, it had burned 1.2 million acres and consumed 500 structures. But these figures only tell a small part of the story, the impact and the loss generated from large-scale, high-severity wildfire. These impacts play out in our communities, economies, and landscapes long after a fire is declared out. The impacts of the 2018 Camp Fire in Paradise, California, bring these losses into acute focus. Our homes, businesses, jobs, favorite places, friends, and loved ones are critically important to how we construct our sense of identity and belonging. The loss of one or more of these can be devastating to our emotional well-being, our financial security, and our personal health. The impacts also play out on the collective community's well-being in terms of sustaining our economic systems in the face of a fragmented business community due to wildfire. The subsequent loss of tax revenues from decreased economic activity, rising housing costs due to decreased supply, rising utility costs due to repair and rebuilding needs, threaten community stability and resilience. Tackling these challenges requires strong community leadership and resilient social networks. However, in the face of such loss and tragedy, some may not have the capacity to be that community leader at that time. Others may choose or be forced due to economic circumstances to move elsewhere. The impacts of catastrophic wildfire on communities are far-reaching and will take years, if not a lifetime, to recover from. Over 100 years of fire suppression and the exclusion of cultural burning practiced by tribes in the region for thousands of years, combined with the reduction in timber harvest, contribute to forest conditions that increase the risk of catastrophic wildfire. With the reduction of timber harvest, jobs and investment in the forestry sector decreased significantly as well. Most mills and processing plants, along with forestry services, went out of business. The industry has not experienced a surge of interest or investment from the next generation either. High capital costs required to enter the market or expand existing facilities, compounded with little assurance of securing a reliable fiber supply needed to justify market-based returns, have positioned us poorly in terms of workforce capacity, infrastructure, and market investment needed to address the contributing factors driving catastrophic wildfire. The lack of active forest management has resulted in overly dense forests where too many trees are competing for a limited amount of nutrients, sunlight, and water. Meanwhile, our forest rates of mortality are rising. Overstocked forest, vulnerable to disease, drought, pest, and the increasing effects of climate change, meaning less rain, higher temperatures, and stronger winds, further exacerbate these risks. Increasing the pace and scale of forest restoration requires that we increase our capacity in terms of market-based solutions. This is because, given our current conditions, forest health treatments often cost more financially, that is, than the direct revenues they generate. There is simply not enough government or philanthropic funds needed to subsidize the cost of treatment to work at the pace and scale we need to avert this crisis. Second, even if funding forest health projects were not an issue, we still face the challenge of what to do with the biomass generated from these projects if we are to reduce fuel loads and associated risks. What we've set out to do in creating CalForest Works is to make a world that our grandchildren's grandchildren can thrive in. That requires working together in partnership to create a regenerative future. We are holding this moment of great self-realization of the peril we face with a recognition that these threats can only be met by improving forest health. We intend to use the attention and resources catalyzed by these risks to create opportunities as we re-envision our future. We aim to do this by growing a complementary, innovative forest product business ecosystem that utilizes biomass and smaller diameter trees to produce value-added products that deliver long-term economic, social, and environmental benefits. Our goals are to reduce risk to communities from natural resources from high severity, large-scale wildfire. We aim to create fire and climate adapted landscapes and communities. We aim to contribute to the state's affordable housing, building, and energy needs. We aim to increase the number of living wage jobs in rural communities. We aim to be a leader in sustainable wood product research, innovation, and development. And we aim to restore, maintain, or improve nature's benefits, such as air and water quality, economic well-being, cultural connections among people and the land, habitat for native species. And last but not least, we aim to address climate change by reducing carbon emissions and increasing long-term carbon storage. You probably remember this supply-demand graph from high school economics. In the most simple terms, our strategy is aimed at creating demand and facilitating supply of forest biomass and smaller diameter trees. The idea being is if we can increase demand and move up the supply curve, we can increase revenues from forest health treatments so that we can implement forest health and fuels reduction projects that would otherwise have to wait for a grant or government subsidy. In terms of creating demand that meets our goals, I'd like to share a few examples of the types of opportunities we are working on cultivating. Moxie OID's Cellulose product checks all the boxes. Cellulose is a construction material that will be a market disruptor in the building industry. This is essentially a mineralized fiberboard made from 95% biomass and 2 other non-toxic agricultural ingredients. It reduces greenhouse gas emissions and risks to forest health by creating market demand for biomass that reduces fuel loading, sequesters carbon for the life cycle of the product, and displaces competing market products that emit carbon. Lastly, it will create jobs in our rural communities. Some of the challenges we face in attracting such businesses to California has to do with our interesting timber history and beliefs among industry investors about the cost and viability of doing business in California. Attracting manufacturers such as Moxie OID requires that we seek and invite these opportunities. It requires that we help facilitate their interest and connections in our communities. It requires us to understand the opportunities for public policy to help level the playing field for doing business in California. It requires that we help educate businesses and investors about these programs, such as the Cal Competes Tax Credit Program, which incentivizes investment in California. Success on this level requires affecting beliefs about what is possible and demonstrating success. CalForest Works has invited and facilitated Moxie OID's interest in developing a manufacturing facility on the North Coast to do just that. Mass timber is another example of a market opportunity we aim to cultivate. Mass timber refers to engineered wood products where small diameter wood, typically 9 to 12 inches or down to 4 inches, is combined to make structural building materials that displace steel and concrete and mid to high-rise buildings. Industry leaders in mass timber project that the number of mass timber buildings constructed in the US will double every 2 years. This represents a significant increase in demand for smaller diameter trees that will help propel forest thinning. It also has the added benefit of increasing long-term carbon storage in our built environment, such so that by 2034, if these projections are realized, the construction industry would be a net carbon storage industry. Like cellulose, mass timber also displaces other building technologies that emit carbon, such as steel and concrete. In Europe, public policy requiring high energy efficiency standards in buildings drove the development of the mass timber market, as these computer-designed factory-built structures offer significant energy savings and carbon emission reductions over the life cycle of the building. As an added benefit, mass timber is known for its beauty and biophilic design and offers the opportunity for people and nature to connect through the built environment. This design has been found to enhance creativity, reduce mental stress, improve feelings of well-being, reduce absenteeism, and increase employee retention. A couple of ways that public policy and public institutions can play a critical role in increasing overall market demand for mass timber is through increasing energy efficiency standards for new buildings and encouraging full cost accounting, including carbon emissions and bid evaluation criteria for construction projects. The good news is that California is already a leader in building with mass timber. The bad news is that there are no mass timber manufacturers in California. Hence, we are not able to capture the direct benefits of the growth of this industry. Rather, these mass timber products are being sourced from Oregon, Washington, Canada, and in some cases, Europe. For California to take advantage of the rise of mass timber, we need to create demand for California forest fiber and manufactured products. Public policy and public institutions have a role to play here as well. We need California public procurement policies that incentivize the use of California fiber and California manufactured products to encourage investment in California-based mass timber manufacturing. Academia and research institutions also have a role to play in supporting California as a leader in wood product construction technologies by developing programs and research that support student development and innovation in construction technologies, architecture, engineering, design, and building systems. And as my next slide will show, material sciences as well. Locally, Cal Forest Works is working with Fabric Workshop, a mass timber affordable housing startup, to develop mass timber production facility in Humboldt County. Opportunities to facilitate demand also rest with developing non-traditional forest products that require creativity, research, partnerships, and institutional support. I'll share just a couple unsuspecting forest products that result from collaborations among academia, government, and private industry. The handbag that you see here was recently featured in Vanity Fair. It represents a collaborative venture between Hermes and MycoWorks, the producer of a mushroom leather generated out of a wood chip substrate. This innovation began in part through a collaboration with research laboratories at UC Berkeley and has since moved into commercialization. On the right, you're looking at samples of a bone-like material generated from biomass that's being developed to replace the use of metal rods in healing severe bone injuries. It was developed through research at the University of Maine, which has integrated forest products throughout a number of their departments and academic programs. To facilitate supply, we need to better understand the systems that influence a forest to market approach to improving forest health. To these ends, we have been working with Conservation Investment Management, funded through the Innovative Finance for National Forest Grant, to map this system based on interviews and research. There are a number of opportunities we've identified in our preliminary systems analysis to resolve pinch points in the supply chain, such as supporting business and workforce development in the transportation sector, to opportunities to decrease transaction costs through coordinating multi-landowner vegetation products, to increase efficiency and reduce mobilization costs. Cal Forest Works is positioning to support these investments by providing facilitative services to convene partners in developing and implementing a shared strategy aimed at resolving the pinch points, business incubation to help launch new businesses in this sector, concierge services to help showcase our region, solicit and cultivate investment, advancing investment opportunities for research and development to address barriers and create new market solutions, partnering with SBDC to support industry-specific technical service delivery, and supporting investment in workforce to meet landowner, managers, and business needs. However, we have more work to do in this arena. In the coming months, we'll be using our preliminary systems analysis to engage partners to further inform the system dynamics, build a shared understanding and common language around the system, and seek to come to agreement on barriers that impede the system, their relative significance, and the key actions needed to create a more resilient system. This will result in a strategic action plan that will prioritize actions and roles for implementation. We need to think creatively about the opportunities that lay before us to generate an innovative complementary forest product business ecosystem that will deliver regenerative, equitable, intergenerational benefits. We need to leverage new investments in port facilities, broadband, and the university to launch new ventures and cultivate renewed interest in what forest products look like and the opportunity it holds for us. If any of this resonated with you, I offer a few ways you can help create the blueprint and make it happen. First, we have the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, referred to as CEDS, which is currently under development. This is a 5-year plan that allows the county to compete for economic development administration funds that will support the plan's implementation. The county is leading this effort and will be holding some public meetings in Garberville, Willow Creek, as well as industry leader workshop in the coming months. You can search online to find more information about this process and get involved. SERP, or the Community Economic Resilience Fund that the mayor told us about in her opening remarks, is another way you can help integrate forest products in our economic development future. Announcements of planning fund awards are anticipated later this month. This will launch a robust 4-county collaborative process that is well suited to address such large landscape scale challenges and opportunities we face related to forest health and economic development. The state will be providing $500 million in rolling competitive grants available to serve regions to implement recommendations generated through the planning phase. Last but not least, I'm thrilled to announce that the CalForest Works has received commitment from our regional office to fund the partner engagement I just referenced a moment ago to map the forest system market dynamics in collaboration with our partners. As I mentioned before, this will lead to a strategic action plan to provide a coordinated approach that we can work on collectively in our unique roles to implement. In addition, we are in the process of developing our institutional infrastructure within a nonprofit framework. We will be soliciting board members to increase our capacity to advance our mission. If you're interested in rolling up your sleeves and helping to shape our future in forest products, please reach out. I invite you to be a part of all of these processes and want to impress the importance of expressing these opportunities in our economic development plans so that we can align implementation resources. I've included more information at the end of my presentation on how you can get more information and stay involved in these processes. So, going back to the morning of September 12th, as my kids logged into their virtual classrooms, I asked myself, so what should I do on the apocalypse? And the answer was clear. Get to work. There's too much to lose, so much to gain, and no time to waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. It sounded great to us. I hope that you were able to bear with that, but it was perfect for us. Great presentation.
Wonderful. Thank
you. Really looking forward to, you've already done some great work, and looking forward to seeing how all of that progresses, and really good calls to action too. So thank you for doing that. Our next item is going to be, we got a little preview from this yesterday when we heard from Visit California. It's a tourism discussion, and the topic is the power of telling our own story, cultural and ecotourism on Yurok tribal lands. So I would like to welcome Rosie Claiborne and Tiana Williams-Clausen to talk about some of the many programs that they have going on the Yurok tribal lands. Welcome.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Rosie and I talked about it, and I think we're going to go ahead and jump in with my half of it, which is talking about specifically condors and how they relate to our region. So let me go ahead and try and share my screen. Okay. Does that look right to you guys?
Looks great, thanks.
Okay, perfect. So today I'm going to talk about something that is very near and dear to my heart, which is that Kichpreganishnesquichat, or that California condor has returned to Yurok country, and really kind of get into the story of California condor in Yurok country and what that means to the region. So this is an economic summit. I am a biologist through and through, but I did want to really focus on an introduction to the birds, an introduction to their meaning in this region, but also how ecotourism can serve as a path to restoration, which is one of the primary things that the Yurok tribe is all about. Restoring our lands, our people, our spirit, our culture, and condor ties to each of those things. So if you're not familiar with condors, they've only been here for a little bit, or at least recently. They're actually a giant obligate scavenger. So they're a large vulture, basically. They're actually the largest land-based bird in North America with a wingspan of 9 to 9.5 feet and weighing as much as 25 pounds. They're very long-lived with a lifespan of about 60 plus years in the wild. And they can actually fly as much as 100 to 200 miles in a day, which is very impressive, but also highlights their potential impact for landscape level change. So this is a pair of condors. They form lifelong mate bonds. They really focus on being good parents, laying only one egg every other year, which they'll incubate for 56 to 58 days and which won't fledge for 6 to 7 months, which is very long for a bird, but they have to kind of grow into their 9.5-foot wingspan. They don't actually reach full maturity till 6 to 8 years, and they actually spend the full first 2 years of that cycle with their parents, learning what it means to be a condor, learning from everything that they know about the landscape. So this is all important information because they have a slow reproductive rate, but an unfortunately high mortality rate, mostly caused by humans, and which is currently keeping them in endangered status. So why condor is so important to our region? I really like focusing on this picture, which is from Lynn Risling. She's a local Karuk, Yurok, and Hupa artist who just does incredible work. And I was moved when she told me that she had been inspired to do a whole series of pieces based on condor, based on our work. But I love her art because it shows how vital our local indigenous communities are to the North Coast. They're very bright, they're very beautiful, and they talk about that kind of cyclical nature that is inherent to all of tribal understandings of the world. So this in particular shows two of the high ceremonies that are shared amongst a lot of the peoples in this region, the white deerskin dance and the lifting up dance, or sometimes called the jump dance. And it shows the role that indigenous populations continue to play today, not only ceremonially, but on the ground in the kind of physical world, I guess you might say, in making restoration happen. So these are our world renewal ceremonies. It's kind of like talking our prayers and then walking our talk, or however you want to put it, the sort of restoration that we do on the ground. But the sort of work or the sort of things that can be done through art like this or other interpretive can really change the view of what tribal people can bring to the table and really make clear to visitors what we mean to this region. Condor for us as Yurok people is one of the highest of animals, I guess you'd say. He can literally soar the highest. So we figured that was the one to get our prayers to heaven when we were asking for the world to be in balance, according to a cultural leader and former council member, Richard Myers. In our stories, he gave us the Condor song, which is a very important prayer that we sing. And he provides his spirits or his feathers and thereby his spirit to our ceremonies. Many Yurok families teach that he's never to be harmed and feathers are considered to be gifts. And for all of these reasons, a panel of our elders called the Tribal Park Task Force chose him as the highest priority land species to return to Yurok country because he was actually made locally extinct over 130 years ago now. And our story with Condor is just indicative of his story overall. So this is actually a graph of condor populations worldwide over the last century. And so by the early 1980s, their population had dropped to just 22 individuals overall, unfortunately, largely due to humans. So there was a reduction in the megafauna, those large game animals that they like to eat, deer, elk, whales, sea lions, whose populations were very impacted after the California gold rush. There's direct human take. There was loss of the habitat that they rely on. This last talk was awesome because it talked about the need to restore forest health. They really rely on those old growth trees and forests. They actually really rely on the expansive prairies that local peoples used to maintain here and are working to reestablish. There's what we call incidental poisoning. People would put out poisoned carcasses for the animals like bears and wolves that condors were to eat, or they'd kill them directly. And then there's two remaining issues, which are DDT contamination and lead toxicity. But in part, the biggest issue for condors these days is the threat from lead, which is actually coming from use of lead ammunition. So lead is a very soft metal. It fragments heavily upon impact and unfortunately gets into the remains of animals that most hunters will leave behind, and which normally is good food for condors to eat, except when studded with this toxic metal. So we started our Hunters as Stewards project to reach out to our local hunting and sporting communities, our ranchers, to say, hey, let's make a transition away from the use of lead and towards copper ammunition, which was made specifically to get the job done, but has the additional benefit of not having these unintended side effects of putting toxic lead into the system. So all of this to say, we have successfully reintroduced condors now to the North Coast, just as of this year, though it's been a 14-year process at least. And we're releasing them in an area that is sacred to the Yurok tribe, but as well as to the Cholula and the Karuk and the Wiyot, and where we actually share jurisdictional or kind of traditional and modern authorities over it as a kind of a crossover between Yurok ancestral territory and Redwood National and State Parks lands, who's been a very strong partner in making condors happen. So we have 4 birds who have been released, and we've actually got 4 birds staged right now to be released. You can see all 8 of them plus a mentor bird inside our facility within Redwood National and State Parks. And here's where we get to the human aspect, I would say, which is really what this whole talk is about when it comes to restoration of the region, because it's humans who are going to be able to make condors thrive. All of our birds, I mean, condors are a very charismatic species. Some people look at them and they see that bald head and they're like, I'm not so sure. But once you see a condor in flight with that majestic wingspan, I mean, that's the kind of terminology you hear from folks: majestic, wonderful, incredible. My life was changed when you see condors. And so ways that we are managing the species is through transmitters and tags, so that we can track wherever they are on the landscape, engage with landowners who may have interesting resources or potentially risks to the species. We can conduct analyses about how they're reintegrating with the landscape, but we can also do a lot of human outreach. And this is where ecotourism really comes in. So for example, we have the Yurok Condor live feed, which anybody can access from the Yurok tribe website. And we're going to be growing in our opportunities for in-person learning and interpretation, which Rosie's not going to talk just about condors, but that's an example. The stuff that she's going to be talking about is going to be an example of how we can share the Yurok and the condor and the local story. But so we're already working on developing presentations, youth events, bird tours, tabling, pamphlets, social media, and interpretive staff, and integrating ourselves into the visitor centers so that as people come in, they can learn not only about condors, not only about Yuroks, but how we as human beings contribute to restoration. Say, for example, in making transitions away from lead ammunition, or say, for example, in reestablishing healthy forests or healthy prairie systems. That said, we did not bring condors back for the economic benefit that they will bring to the region. But the fact of the matter is we fully expect that they will support the economy of our region. So roughly $17.3 billion is spent annually in the US on wildlife watching related trips, with more than 20 million Americans specifically taking bird watching trips. In California alone, nearly 5 million people go bird watching and about 2.3 million travel to do so. And of course, that's really important for our local economy as we are so tourist dependent. But Californians generate as much as $3.8 billion in economic impact. And so according to a 2018 poll by Birdwatching Magazine, condor actually ranks as the #1 bird in the states that people want to see. So we fully expect that our region is going to greatly benefit from condors' return. In return, we think that condors are going to greatly benefit from human integration and understanding of what condors need to have a healthy and abundant life, because we have the capacity to restore the ecosystem in a way that makes it tenable for their use again. Ultimately, our long-term vision is that the lower human populations in the Pacific Northwest may reduce that human condor conflict, and we aim to release about 120 birds over the next 20 years, as well as help support wild breeding. We see Northern California as just the next phase of condor recovery, representing a gateway into the broader Pacific Northwest. And so a lot of this economic and ecotourism outreach is going to be important as people come into the region and then take the knowledge that we can provide to them back to their homes. Ultimately, the goal is to have birds without tags that we don't have to manage. This is a picture of my beautiful daughter. I always love to share her wherever I can, looking up into the sky. And it's just, it kind of depicts what I hope to see one day, when you can just look up into the sky and see a condor naturally a part of the environment, no longer having to be managed by humans, and just reintegrated into our world. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Rosie to talk about the wonderful work that she does. But if you want more information on our particular project, you can go to the Yurok Tribe's wildlife specific page, or we also maintain a Facebook page at Yurok Condors. So thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Am I good? Okay.
We could hear you, yes.
Okay. So Ayakui Neknau Rosie Claiborne. I'm the Tribal Heritage Preservation Officer and the Cultural Resources Director for the Yurok Tribe. I want to first acknowledge that today is actually a pretty important day in California. Today's California Indian Day. And so I think it's really fitting that Tiana and I are here talking to a lot of our economic leaders in the region. And, you know, I always like to challenge people, if you don't already know, to know whose homeland you do business on. And there's always a way to work with and incorporate Native voices into all of the work that we do. So starting off for me, you know, I like Tiana's a biologist. I'm a trained archaeologist and anthropologist. And so economics was kind of always something that's not at the forefront of what I do. However, the Yurok tribe, you know, we have a very large ancestral territory. There's lots of businesses. There's agencies that are within our homelands. And, you know, we have a lot of relationships with those agencies. And so the Yurok tribe, under my department in partnership with the North Coast Redwood State Park, we actually operate a visitor center. It's called Chapek Alketa in the Yurok language, or Stone Lagoon Visitor Center. Let's see. I don't know why my thing's not moving forward, but it's not. Sorry, my thing. There we go. Okay, so the Yurok tribe is the first agreement in the state of California for a tribe to operate a state park facility. So this is pretty huge. You know, we signed an agreement, which is called a joint powers agreement, in February of 2020 to operate the visitor center. It's in complete partnership with the state park, and, you know, the facility is operated under my department. I could say, you know, we actually started this right in the middle of COVID. So it was a big challenge for the tribe to get this facility up and operating, because there were challenges with, you know, supply chains, and then just this year, you know, workforce and being able to be in a building together. So some stuff about Chapek. Chapek there is a significant Yurok village. It's a ceremonial site of the jump dance that Tiana talked about. It was last done in 1887 until it was revitalized in 2012. Chapek, the actual lagoon itself, is has a lot of subsistence resources for Yurok people and for the condor. You know, we have ducks, fish, elk, and many resources that are gathered there. It was significantly impacted by the California gold rush, and, you know, the tragic history that happened up and down the state of California, and specifically in Humboldt and Del Norte counties, where Yurok is located. It was mainly uninhabited by, you know, the time the gold rush came in the 1850s. And it was also the subject of heavy looting and desecration by archaeologists and amateurs through the beginning of the 1900s. The building itself, I don't know if anybody's actually driven by it. It's a historic building, which was just a challenge in itself. It's been remodeled so many different times. And, you know, electrical was horrible. You know, it's right by 101. It was operated as, you know, the little red hen for many years. And a lot of our local folks remember as the little red hen. That was a bar and restaurant and gas station and store and had cabins. And you could see the historic photos there, as well as the historic cabin sign that we did keep there. The state park acquired it in 1983 and began operating it as kind of a visitor center. So some of our, project goals, of course, is really to support the descendants of Chapek and the ceremony that happens there. Because it's such a public place and it's operated right on the highway of 101. And then, the ceremony happens right there where we actually cross the highway. There was kind of a clash in those early years between, tourism and, cultural ceremonies happening. And one of the ways that we really, look at ourselves as a way to make that link, to help facilitate those conversations and provide that education, to visitors about local cultures and ways that we can kind of work together. We also wanted to make sure that this wasn't just a place for visiting tourists that were coming through, but it was also a community space for tribal members. And, I always was pretty amazed as we were working on this building, because we worked on it for about 2 years, and 95% of the Yurok tribal membership that stopped by had never been in that building since it was a state park. And so it kind of just showed that, that wasn't a place that was always meant for our local Indigenous people, or even just for our local community members. And so, we're operating and we're open to the public. Some of our objectives in kind of creating that space were to highlight cultural, natural, and historical elements of the Humboldt Lagoons. And the Humboldt Lagoons are, a section of the Redwood district of the state park. Provide recreational opportunities to the general public, and provide programming for local communities as well as the visiting public. And one of our big things was making sure that it was accessible. We use text that is specifically for, visually impaired people, and trying to, and we're still working on that and making sure that it's accessible for everybody. Of course, operating it is myself that oversees it. We have an archive technician who's pulled a lot of the historical stuff. And, because we were operating right in COVID, we couldn't actually get contractors to come out. And so we actually did the remodeling ourselves. It was an all Native women's team that did the physical remodel of the building, which was actually super fun, but Sasha was our general contractor too. We have Nicole Peters. If you ever stop by the lagoon, she'll be the one that welcomes you there, along with the state parks interpretive staff that works with her. We have a lot of state park employees that have helped, the interpreters. We have 2 interpreters that are stationed out of there that are actually state park employees, but local Native women. We also partnership with other tribal entities such as Tiana, Wai's Yurok Economic Development, and many others. We were open 6 days a week in the summer and then 4 in the off season. And so I just wanted to share kind of rewriting the panels that were in there. And, a lot of, the title of this talk is telling our own story. And when you went into that visitor center before, it was written from a perspective that was not Yurok. And it was written from a perspective that was misleading. And, we redid everything, and reminding people that even though that it might be a state park now, that it's always been and it always will be Yurok land, and that we have strong ties to that land, and that, you're not going to get the history or understand Yurok people throughout history and even into contemporary times without getting firsthand knowledge from Native people. And I, like to highlight that this is really possible from having strong partnerships and strong relationships with the state park staff and with other, local groups. That's really where it comes down to, is having conversations and having hard conversations and having the ability to trust one another. And, as Tiana said, one of our probably, most asked questions is about condors. And so, we wanted to make sure from the get-go that we included, information about the Condor program. We have an interpretive panel there. We also have the live stream when our Wi-Fi is showing, or when our Wi-Fi is working. We don't have the best Wi-Fi there, but it's pretty awesome. And people come in and ask a lot of questions. I would say the number one question that we get asked, and we've been kind of keeping a log of the questions that we get, and how many people come in, all of our statistics. And I think the number one we get is, where do we see a condor? And we're not quite ready there, or quite ready to do that. But as the time, comes when, condors start to venture out a little bit farther, and, our history and our culture tells us that they will come down to the lagoon. We look forward to doing programming and more education around the condor, and having people understand their importance to Yurok people, and all of the things that Tiana talked about. We also carry Lynn Risling's artwork, the stuff that she was inspired by the condor to create. She brought into the lagoon, and we sell it for her there. So, the education, the history, the culture, that interpretation stuff is all things that I'm very familiar and very comfortable with doing. What I struggled with, and what I'm still learning, is the economic side of it. So we do operate a visitor center / gift shop. So inside, we have a logo that was created by the Mad River Brewery graphic designer. And we have logo wear. We also have, Yurok tribe wear. We created a space for local artists to sell their things. We do not do commission. We just buy it and then resell. And that seems to work a little bit better for us. So we have a lot of Native artists featured there. We've also hosted in the past year 2 events. We had the grand opening kind of span over a weekend. The first day was kind of, we had a lot of dignitaries and folks there. And then, what I wanted to do is make sure that our community was included in the celebrating of Yurok people coming home there. And so we did a large event that was open to the public. There was basket weaving, gambling, traditional gambling, and lots of vendors, and lots of our programs had booths there. And we actually look forward to making that an annual event. And so we'll be hopefully expanding it even more every year that it goes on. So I think, yep, I'm at time and I'm over time, so I will stop there.
Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this presentation for months now, so it was really great. So thank you very much, and we're going to bring on our next presentation, which is how to have impactful, meaningful, and far-reaching climate action as a small business. And we're going to hear from Patty Martin. And are you ready, Patty?
Yes, I am.
Right on. Thank you.
Yep, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. Oop. Okay, so I am so excited to be here with everyone. Thank you for having me. Today I'm going to talk about climate action for small business and how you can take impactful, meaningful, and far-reaching action. So my name is Patty Martin. I am a climate coach and consultant. I actually grew up in Mendocino County on the ancestral lands of the Caddo tribe, and I am currently running my business on those of the Northern Pomo. I am a scientist by training. I am a podcaster, and I'm a creative. I'm a disruptor. And I list these because I kind of bring all of these qualities into my work. And overall, my approach to climate action is definitely based in my science background. But I also try to bring in a solid sense of gritty optimism, a lot of messy action, and trying to not have a fear of failure, some radical honesty, some shared humanity, and some ancient wisdoms. Overall, my goal is to empower individuals, small business, and communities to take meaningful and impactful climate action. And this can look very different than what you would expect it to look. Now, I would first like to start off this presentation by really discussing hope as it pertains to climate action. In so many ways, we see the opposite of this message every single day. We see the catastrophes, we see the extinctions, we're dealing with them. And it's very easy to lose sight of what our future potential is. And the truth is, when we put our minds to it, we can get things done. We can achieve the unimaginable things. And what that takes is a clear vision for our future that allows us to rise to our highest human capacities. We get to decide if we want to be leaders in this space. We get to decide how we interact with our environment, our connection to ourselves, to the earth, to each other. In 1961, JFK announced this incredibly dramatic and ambitious goal of having a person walk on the moon. And at the time of this announcement, no one had ever even safely flown in space before. They had no idea how they were going to do this. And yet, less than 10 years later, someone was walking on the moon. And we do things like this every single day. We do the unimaginable all the time. We start businesses, we run marathons, whatever it is. And that's what gives me hope. And this is really the place that I hope all of us come from, is that we have a place in our future. We have to act and grab it. Now, there are three big challenges, as I see them, that pertain to climate change, that kind of umbrella everything. One is the rapid and uncontrolled release of emissions that has changed our world as we know it. The cat is out of the bag, we can't put it back in. And now, if we want to survive, we are now required to adapt. And that pertains to humans, that's for all of us. In order to survive, we must change. For adaptation to occur, humans will need to change their behavior. Those are our three challenges. The good news is we have the indigenous knowledge and scientific technology to really get at 1 and 2. We can mitigate our emissions, and we can adapt and bring our earth back into balance. Our biggest challenge lands on number 3, changing human behavior. Over 90% of people in the US acknowledge that climate change is real, and yet 75% of people do not know what to do about it. And this is where small businesses come in. Small businesses are a key untapped resource in climate action. And this is because small business acts at the interface of humans and society. It is through our small businesses that we go with our families and connect with our friends. We learn and we share ideas and we get creative, we relax, we get inspired, we evolve with our small businesses. We are educated by our small businesses, we learn from them. And it is this circle of influence that makes small business critical in our way forward towards climate change. The good news, there is lots of money for small businesses to go after climate solutions. There's grants, including the Inflation Reduction Act that is in the next 9 months, we'll be seeing a lot more. There's some really fabulous low interest loans that by the time you have whatever solution you have installed into your business, you might have already made your money back. And there's some really great discounts out there. The other good news is that consumers really want climate action from our businesses. 64% of people say they are willing to pay more money for a product that is sustainable. 77% of people say that they care about the impact of the products that they buy. 85% care about the environmental labeling on their products. 75% of people are willing to switch a product if it is not environmentally friendly. And 28% of people have straight up stopped using a product or using a company that doesn't meet their ethical and environmental standards. People are willing to put their money behind their ideals around this, and they are really looking to business to rise to this occasion. Now, there are many different climate solutions out there. If you looked into them at all, there's thousands, and it's very easy to invest in solutions that take a lot of your resources, may take a lot of your staff time, your money, and they might not necessarily be worth the squeeze. And that's what I really want you to think about going forward in this. Which solution should you choose? I put together some climate solution considerations for you to think about as a way to be able to choose one solution over another, as a way to get a little less overwhelmed by all the options out there. Number one, what is the speed of the action? Can you engage with the solution right now, or is it going to take 6 months, a year, 2 years to begin engaging with the solution? What is its emissions reduction potential? Is it reducing transportation emissions, which is the leading source of emissions in California, or is it reducing maybe just plastic waste, right? One versus the other. While plastic waste has forever been, we have been told that is the #1 climate action that we can take, transportation emissions greatly outweighs that. What is its adaptation and resiliency potential? How many people does it reach? Is it just impacting you, your family, your individual business, or is it something that can impact everyone in your community, everyone who comes into your business? And is the action diverse, equitable, and inclusive? Now, there are different ways to look at climate actions. There's a lot of, and I wish that there was just one list I could give everyone and say, okay, go do these things and go home and we're done. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. Depending on who you are and how you function in society, how your business functions in society, there are very different actions you should be taking to engage in climate solutions. So here is a list of 4 modes of action that I recommend you start thinking about as a business, as a community. Number 1, how you engage with your customers, how you engage with your collaborators, how you engage internally with your staff, and then how you advocate for solutions. So for how you engage with your customers, it is, when you think about, you should be thinking about ways in which customers are making decisions in your business and designing these decisions so that the default decision is climate friendly. In terms of how you're engaging with your collaborators, promote the use of climate solutions with them. If you start using a new technology or a new tool, tell this to the other businesses you talk with. Tell this to the businesses you are receiving your products from or you're selling your products to. Educate your staff on climate talking points and promote climate conversations. Spread the word that way. Businesses engage with thousands of people every single year. Those are thousands of climate conversations that you could be having. That reach is phenomenal. And 4, advocate for climate solutions with your businesses, in your community, and on a state and federal level. Thank you for taking the time to listen to me. If you are at all thinking about getting engaged in climate solutions, if you're overwhelmed, you don't know how to do it, reach out to me. I would love to talk. There's a lot of really creative solutions, a lot of great resources to get you going in the right direction. Here's my contact information. I also have a podcast where I talk specifically about how to have climate conversations and tell your climate story. I have a monthly newsletter you can sign up for that covers all things climate solutions related to small business, including funding, tips, tricks, etc. And I work as a climate consultant. Please reach out if you're interested. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I think it's really great to see business leading the way, or they can do things much faster than government can. So we love it when they can make those steps on their own without having to go through the whole process of forcing them to do it. So thank you so much. And we are going to move on to our last presentation at the conference before our breakout rooms and our synthesis and call to action. Big topic in every single county is regenerative organic farming. And this is these are some really great leaders in that. We have Blake Alexander and Joy Merrilees, who are going to be doing that presentation. So thank you so much for being here. And the floor is yours.
Blake, you're welcome to take it away.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll go first, and then Stephanie, my wife, is sitting next to me, helping me maybe with a couple videos that we'll call up. But I just wanted to say first, I'm sitting here kind of listening to all this and understanding, the connection, the deep connection to really all four speakers that just spoke in front of me in presentations, and I think it's really. The connection is regenerative. And so I know a lot of folks understand regenerative and really absolutely embrace it. And then there's a lot of folks that don't fully understand it. And I'm going to just tell our story. We'll maybe share the screen here and put a couple slides up so you can see our family and who we are. But we are, I was born and raised in Ferndale in Humboldt County. Stephanie and I have been living up here in Crescent City, Del Norte County now for 30 years. And we raised our 5 children here. So we've got a slide of our kids. We now have 4 grandkids. So the picture is about 1.5 years outdated. And what we've been doing here on the farm, we bought land here and started 30 years ago. And about 25 years ago or so, we became organic and started pressing down that direction and kind of creating markets. There were no dairy markets that were established. We had Albert Strauss down in the Bay Area that was pretty good, but we were the 9th farm in California dairy farm to convert to organic. And since then, it's been overwhelming. 100% of all the dairy farms in Humboldt and Del Norte County are now organic. And we're really happy to be part of that process to kind of bring change. And the reason that we got involved was really because we had 5 young children at the time and wanted to make our farm sustainable and a viable option long-term for our kids as they got married and met their spouses and made a career decision. And so we're really happy to report our oldest 3 that are married all work for us in either Humboldt or Del Norte counties. And it just really feels good. And so we've brought a sustainable component to our farm through marketing, which was organic. And as we went organic, we really learned the primary thing that I think we learned initially was paying attention to the organic matter in the soil and understanding that we had to build soil and we had to build organic matter. And every time we increased the organic matter, so our farm here was, let's just say it was 3% average organic matter in the soil. And today it's like 10 and 15. But every percentage point is like adding sponge to the soil that is holding water. And so therefore we don't spend as much money on irrigation during the dry season or during the droughts that we've certainly had here in the West for the last 3 years. And it's just very beneficial. And so we've had an intense focus on that all 25 years of understanding the soil. And regenerative kind of just came along and we almost fell into it naturally. And I'd like to maybe focus on regenerative now and really what that means. And simply put, the definition would be that we are regenerating soil by building soil and creating soil. And you can think of our ranch as getting an inch taller every decade. And so everything we do is in harmony with nature and truly paying attention to the biology of what's going on in the soil. That's the bacteria and the fungi and the microarthropods, the worms, just everything. And then, of course, doing no harm. So we don't use commercial fertilizers. We don't do things that would really rock their world in a bad way. We do things that feed them. And in return, they have a really awesome symbiotic relationship with our plants and the root systems. And it just goes in a super positive direction all the time. I'd like to maybe now connect that to the 4 speakers in front of me. This is a crazy coincidence in a way, but I think it really connects. So first we heard from Fisheries and Ashley, who I actually just met on YouTube a few days ago with a commercial that aired. So that was awesome to see. But we get fish waste to add to our compost. We focus on compost here since we've gone organic. And we bring in fish waste from 3 counties, Humboldt, Del Norte, and Curry County in Oregon, and large quantities. So, big semi truckloads, 2 or 3 truckloads a day. So, 100, 150 loads a year. And we work all that into our compost. The majority of our compost is forestry products, our second speakers. So we get a lot of shavings and sawdust from the mill next to us, which is actually in Curry County, Brookings, Oregon. Again, it's literally 200 plus loads a year, maybe 300 truckloads, big loads. And that's one of the base ingredients for our compost systems that we're putting on our farms. The condor speech, I was like, I didn't know that was coming up, and it's like awesome because we are providing our newborn calves that don't make it. So stillborn calves, we put them in a freezer, and we're feeding the condors both from our Humboldt County dairies and our Del Norte County dairies. And we asked how long is that commitment? And they said 20 to 40 years. So it's just awesome. We're working with the tribe, with the Yuroks, to help feed those birds, and we look forward to having those out here on the ranch someday. The last talk was in terms of the climate action. We're sequestering carbon. That's who we are. That's what we do. And so the beautiful benefit of this organic matter that I was talking about in the soil, I just learned this a few years ago. It's 57% carbon. And so as we're building soils and focusing on that, we've been doing our share, to help mitigate and hopefully turn around the greenhouse gases here in our environment and in our world. And so our lands, which we manage, which is a total of 9,000 acres, are sequestering carbon at a really high rate. I think the lowest rate would be about a 1.5 tons per acre per year, and the high side would be closer to 3.5 to 4 tons. And so we're really proud of that, which ultimately makes us a carbon neutral company. We haven't verified that yet. We're certainly working on that, and that wasn't really, we're not doing this so that we can make that claim. It's really a result of who we are and what we do. And it just feels really good to be part of the solution. And I think that, as a dairy farmer and farming family, I guess I didn't really explain what we do, but we primarily milk cows and sell milk. We graze our dairy cattle out and about. We milk on 5 locations in the 2 counties that here on the coast, and we really lean on grass a lot and try to do that. And the slide that's up now shows that we've been doing that for 100 years. So my great-grandfather started in Ferndale, kind of halfway between Fernbridge and town. That's our dairy site. Our son and his wife, and now their little our granddaughter are residents down there and overseeing that farm. So they're 5th and 6th generation, and we're really proud of that, and we have a lot of respect for that. A lot of respect for the soil and the land. And so I'm going to share a video now where a few years ago we were really involved because of our organicness, but our daughter Vanessa participated as a trial participant in two different groups that were setting up regenerative ag. And I think this video will kind of show a sense of that right now.
We are
So
honored
this was 2
to
years ago.
announce Alexander Family Farm is the first and only dairy in the
We're
US.
not seeing the video run. We could hear it on another screen, but it's not running here.
Bummer. Okay.
We'll share again.
We'll keep working on that here. And so we became the very first certified regenerative farm really in the country. And by country, I mean US and world. It wasn't something we set out to do. It just kind of happened because we had been participating as a pilot farm with these two groups, Regenerative Organic Alliance, who had like, I think 22 farms worldwide, and then the Allen Savory Group, which is the land to market.
By the Regenerative.
Can you see it now or?
Yes.
We are honored to announce Alexander.
Yes, we can.
Farm,
Or I can.
first and only dairy in the US to be verified by the Savory Institute and invited by the Regenerative Organic Alliance to join their pilot program. Blake and Stephanie Alexander set out over 25 years ago to bring healthy, old-fashioned practices and values to their new farm. They directed their 5 generations of farming know-how into a singular focus on the health of their ecosystem, and they knew it depends on the soil. More than 2 decades later, their result is a shining, large-scale agriculture example of regenerative hope. And 35,000 hens roaming on 4,300 organic acres. The Alexander soil has gone from 2% organic matter to 8 and 15% organic matter of rich soil, teeming with life. Through the Alexander's regenerative effort, the land has recovered critical coho salmon habitat and nearly extinct Aleutian geese, and is home to a large herd of Roosevelt elk, bald eagles, and hundreds of smaller species.
The concept that the soil is where it all starts. There's organic matter in here and is building at a really fast rate because of the management that we're utilizing here on the farm. Just to put a few numbers to it, 20 years ago when we started measuring our organic matters, it was about 2%. Here in the last couple of years, organic matters were coming in 7 and 8%, all the way up to 15%. And 50% of that organic matter goes to it is carbon. So here we are on the farm, sequestering carbon, making beautiful soil, beautiful grasses, and forage for our beautiful cattle that are then converting it to milk that we're selling to the label Alexander Family Farm.
The family continues to have a singular focus on a healthy ecosystem that supports their dairy and egg businesses and creatures great and small, and their community and customers.
Well, I hope that you are all able to see that, not just those of us on the Zoom link that we're part of here, but if nothing else, you could hear it, and it kind of calls out what we're doing and what we stand for, and I'd like to maybe explain how did we just farmers end up understanding and growing into this situation where we're now honoring our creator's system, and why we do that. And so it started when our kids were young, and we were trying to teach them, do the right thing, just always do the right thing, be nice at school, be nice to your friends, help people. And that evolved into me then starting to tell our employees, and of course myself, we have to do the right thing at every turn. And doing the right thing at every turn is really what has changed our direction of our business, and who we are and what we do, and really why we do it. And so defining the right thing is sometimes difficult, and we're Christians, and so we've really understood that God gave us dominion over the earth, and with that comes a tremendous responsibility to take care of things. And so we are, again, just trying to do the right things, honoring the system that was created for us, and paying attention to that, and working in harmony with nature. And it just feels really good that this regenerative movement has come along to kind of clearly define all that, and wrap it up in one word that certainly consumers and retailers and people have been able to get their head around and embrace. And so, you know, like I said, that wasn't our goal to set out to be regenerative or anything like that. It was really just that this regenerative movement came along, and it was absolutely the most descriptive term that defined who we are and what we're doing. And so we're really happy to be making dairy products, eggs, and you know, milk and yogurt that we are sending now across the country. And you know, we hope to continue to be able to do that in our neighborhood. We hope to help our farming neighbors, you know, get better at what they do, and just really be part of the solution, you know, to greenhouse gas problem that we have in our world, and continue to move forward. We absolutely know that as we build it and they come, these animals and the environment, you know, we win in all directions, and everybody's kind of winning. And when you're, I'd say, farming in harmony with nature. And maybe to back up a little bit, if you're still confused as to what regenerative really is relative to what you normally see in the grocery stores, you know, agriculture in the United States over the last 7, 8, 9 decades has gotten really large and somewhat extractive, and you know, where we just take and take and take as farmers. And we buy commercial fertilizers and put on the soil, and we do that without a regard for the biology and the system that we were really intended to do. And so when you're farming at a pretty intense rate with lots of tractors, you're burning off fuels, so you're releasing carbon both from your equipment and of course your field. As you turn a green pasture into brown soil, carbon is released. And so as we've become aware of that, as you know, responsible farming, we're just really trying to minimize the exposure that our carbon would have back to the atmosphere. And so we're continually, like I said, building soil, and it really snowballs in a positive direction, because the biology are happy, then the plants are happy, and they have a symbiotic relationship where yields then go up. And so it helps us pay the bills in the end. There's certainly some startup costs that are difficult. And I think there's, you know, a fear from large scale agriculture across the country to really wake up and go in this direction. But I certainly want to do our part, and we want to do our part to help educate, you know, farmers across the country and around the world. And it's been a lot of fun. So I think with that, I really could just wrap up, and we'll get on to the rest of this presentation. So thank you again for having me. It's awesome to be included in this, and we welcome visitors here to the farm anytime. We're located in northern Del Norte County, and we again farm here in Humboldt, Del Norte, and Modoc County, where we have a hay ranch.
That was wonderful. It's hard to be the last speaker of the day, but we always like to have a good, strong ending. And I love how you tied everything together, and how often regenerative farming is coming up in conversations in all of the different counties. And to know we have such a leader in our own region is what a great resource for us. So I'm so glad you took time away to spend the day with us, and I will pass this over to Layla, and we'll get to the good discussions.
Not yet, baby. I want to hear about the wines. It's wine o'clock.
Oh,
that's right. It should be happy hour.
I'm so sorry.
But
Thanks, Layla.
is that we want to make space for this, and we'll just condense our synthesis and call to the action at the end, because this is so juicy.
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, super. So we are going to jump. Oh,
We're going to go to Joy.
yes, yes.
Thanks, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
So I'm Joy Merrilees. I'll keep it quick. We'll get to I should have brought wine. This would have been much better. We'll get to the chat here in a second. But so I'm Joy Merrilees, the Vice President of Production at Shannon Family of Wines down in Lake County. There's Mount Canocti and the lake in the background and Shannon Ridge right there. And we are one of the largest employers in Lake County, and we farm we farm about 1,200 acres of grapes. And Blake, so many of the things that you mentioned we are just in the infancy of it. So we have just received our organic certification this year in 2022, and we are now moving into the regenerative organic section of that. And so working with, the 3 pillars of regenerative, which thank you for explaining it very well. The 3 pillars are, improving the soil, animal welfare, and then social fairness for all of the employees and the families and the planet that we live on. So just a little bit about Shannon Ridge and Shannon Ranches. So it's 2 different companies owned by Clay Shannon. And for the winery side, we produce about 325,000 cases of wine a year. So enough for all of you. And then for the farming side, we farm about 1,200 acres on a 2,000 acre piece of property. And we also raise about 600 ewes. In the beginning, we started farming and we added the sheep for more of an efficiency, making sure that we're, using all of the land and we are, kind of adding back to the land. But as we went along, we realized that we needed to be adding so much more to the soil. We needed to be adding more to, making sure that our sheep and the wildlife on the property are taken care of. We needed to also make sure that all of our people and being the largest employer in Lake County, that making sure that all of our people and the community is being taken care of as well. So that's where we kind of pushed ourselves into starting with organic and now moving into regenerative farming. We are in the, Blake mentioned that, in the transition, it's a bit difficult, and it is. It's a challenge. There's a lot of documentation and cost of changing from conventional to organic, and then changing, or not changing again, but even going a step further into regenerative. And but it's definitely important to do, and we're trying to get all of our other local farmers around us to do the same thing. We've seen the benefits of it now, being in the 3rd year of organic farming, and we do a lot of the regenerative pieces. We make compost. We do no-till. We have sheep in the vineyards. We're still at the 2% organic matter for our soils, but we'll get there. We'll get better. It's a little bit more difficult with less rain, but we're trying. And then for animal welfare, increasing the biodiversity on the ranch and the home ranch. Let me switch my picture here really quick. And and you can see, I'll show you some of the sheep. I do have a video, but I'll just send the link so we can get to the chat later. So here's the sheep in Clay Shannon out at our Long Valley property. And so providing shelter for all of the 600 ewes and the baby lambs, and a safe lambing space for them, and providing green food. One of the things about having sheep in the vineyard is that they sanitize the vineyard after harvest, and they're eating all of the grape leaves and grass and things like that. They're protecting us from fires by keeping the weeds down. And they also, eating the grape leaves actually have a higher protein content than grass does. So while they're pregnant in the vineyard in the fall, they're eating a lot of that high protein grape leaves from the vineyard. And then in terms of the social welfare or social fairness pillar of regenerative farming, making sure that we've got competitive wages for all of our 300 plus employees in the county, making sure that we have the majority of full-time jobs and not part-time and seasonal jobs, and training, and then listening to the staff, because quite often, even listening to 300 staff can sometimes be difficult, but they often have the best ideas because they're out there every day, all day, and they see, every piece of it. But, the struggles with the certifications and things like that, we haven't been regeneratively certified yet. We have a little ways to go, and a lot of it's, documentation and making sure that we're putting in all of the processes that makes it work. We're about 60% there. And it really is, it's all about stepping up to do the right thing. And, we're seeing climate change, we're seeing the reduction of grapes. I mean, the grapes are getting smaller and smaller as we get less and less rain every year. That's just driving costs up, but it doesn't matter. We still think this is the most important thing to do for our communities, for our families, and for the planet. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, but I will also, do we have 4 minutes for a video?
You deserve 4 minutes for video, so if you want to
It'll
show
be
it.
quick.
I'd
So
love
it's a video. I will share my screen. It's a video of Clay Shannon talking about sustainable, but also our Project Ovis, which is our transition and the whole journey from conventional to organic and then regenerative farming. Let me know if you can hear it.
Project Ovis is the transformation of a 1,000-acre Northern California mountain vineyard into a beyond sustainable, beyond organic farming system. That's it. I'm not saying here's the recipe how to do it. I'm just saying we're going to start a project. Climate change is going to reduce our yields. We have terrible winds these days. That wind has been giving us grief for 5 years, but it's just gotten warmer. It's just gotten warmer, it's gotten drier, less rain, and this is not a good sign. And I don't think this is going to be easy. I think we're going to fail a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of experimentation, but that's the project. It's going to be an evolution, trying to create a closed system to minimize the use of fossil fuel-based fertilizers and utilize the things we naturally produce on the ranch, whether it's a pine cone or a sheep or wool, to battle the bad guys and the bad bugs and create a balance in nature to make wine. I love running the sheep in the vineyards, and we're doing intense grazing in the vineyard. They're eating the grass, they're pooping out all this good microbe that comes in their manure. The worms are just up there feeding the organic matter on the soil surface. They're grabbing the pieces of carbon, pooping it out all the way down to 3 and 4 foot deep. That is, to me, life. That's life right there. I think if we don't have worms, we're not going to have much life left. Stopping the herbicide had a huge impact on this mountain. Just that one thing. When we stopped using herbicides and started looking at what's underneath the soil, the earthworms went crazy. In the last couple of years, we've cut our water usage in half. We're gonna deal with a little lower crop load, and we're not gonna cultivate. That's gonna ultimately get us climate closer back to balance like it used to be. We are maintaining and diversifying our cover crop. We're adding more legumes, more flowering cover crops out there to bring in beneficial insects. The legumes harvest the air we breathe, which is mostly nitrogen. They're going to put it into their root systems. And as those root systems decay, they're going to release that to the worms and the vines. And then the system starts working well. One thing that you can't go by is like calcium. It takes a truck full of gypsum out of Utah. And I'm like, wait a minute. How about the chicken? Has anybody ever really thought about what the chicken does? it harvests free stuff too. And that is my system to replace the truckloads of fertilizer coming up to the ranch years ago. Well, that's what sustainability is, okay? You got one animal over here fixing a problem, creating a byproduct that somebody could eat or compost to fix another problem. I want to grow a healthier product that's easier on the climate, easier on the world, something that's healthy, something people can trust. I think it's my mission. I want to make a difference. I want to make a freaking difference. You know, I want to hopefully be known as somebody that took the risk to create a better life, to force some change, to forge a better way. There's a better way to do this. We could make a lot more money and farm a hell of a lot cheaper farming conventionally in these mountains. I mean, we're thousands per acre cheaper. And I hope we don't have to do that.
There you go.
That was a great video to end with. And again, I'm sorry, I was looking at the clock, not at the speaker list. And so glad that we were able to hear from you, and it was worth every second of it. So now I'm going to pass it to Layla, and we will do our presentations. And then if we don't get to the synthesis, that's what email's for.
Oh my goodness, my friends, I cannot believe 57 of you have decided to stick it out with us throughout the end of a very long Zoom day. Thank you. Thank you, thank you to our participants for your lively and active participation and questions. Thank you so much to our speakers, our facilitators, and our note takers who gave of your time freely. I was so grateful at the fact that so many of you just said, yes, yes, of course. Yes, I will do this for the greater good. Thank you for being part of the greater good. I have no doubt that all of y'all are kind of pooped and kind of sick of Zoom. So Susan and I thought that we would condense the time we would take for the synthesis and call to action. And what I'm going to do is speak really, really briefly to the themes and the highlights that I observed recurring over and over again in the breakout sessions during our World Cafes, thanks to our really excellent note takers. And we will share both my highlights and themes and the notes and the recordings and any materials that our speakers have provided to us. So don't worry about missing a thing. I hope you've been inspired. I hope you have been cross-pollinated. Here is what I noticed. I'm going to see if it'll allow me to paste. No, too many words for the chat. You'll still get it though. And you know, just for the heck of it, I'm going to share my screen, because if you are like me, you like to absorb information both verbally and visually. So this is just really rough notes that I was taking as I was looking through the notes, and I'm going to scroll by them and touch on some of the highlights. Here's what I noticed. There were a number of conversations that started to explore the ways in which what was happening in one county was an opportunity for collaboration across all 4 counties and tribal lands. You know, obviously workforce education and development, but also the food hubs, the possibility for the value chain aligned with the offshore wind project to belong not just to Humboldt Bay and not just to Humboldt County, but to our entire Redwood Coast region. I was personally tickled to hear a few conversations that sounded to me like promoting the benefits of community ownership and cooperative ownership of certain projects, land trusts as a tool to preserve housing affordability. There was, oh, I love this comment, the idea of using cooperative ownership to not just create, for example, a co-op housing unit, but to create a co-op housing unit that was focused on a particular social goal, in this case, age-in-place housing. Over and over and over again, we heard conversations about how when we are presenting or when we are confronting growth or change, there is always going to be pushback. And in fact, it is healthy and good for there to be tension around any change so that we can debate our way through to an ideal solution. And then, we got to talk about community engagement. One of the things that came up multiple times was involve the folks who will be most directly impacted by whatever the change is early as possible. For example, as the Core Hub team has done with commercial fisheries related to the offshore wind project. The second is I heard a few different ways that people were saying, well, what if we reframe this as this change is coming? But what can we do to shape how it is going to impact us? And how can we use some of the tools in our toolkit to invite people who are going to be affected to participate in, say, conversations using the World Cafe model, as the Humboldt County SUDS process has done, through participatory budgeting, through arts contests, and much more. Community-driven decision-making, beyond let's just ask people what they think. Let us ask people impacted by a change to actually design the whole thing. There are many examples across our region of folks who have brought in experts in human-centered design to start from the beginning as they mean to continue, which is to create a solution that is wholly emerging from the people who are struggling with whatever the issue is. I caught Terry saying yet again during the discussion on Promise Neighborhoods, let the children lead. We are seeing participatory budgeting appear more frequently in our area. The two that came to mind immediately were the Promise Neighborhoods and the parents getting involved, and the City of Arcata that I'm aware of for the Valley West neighborhood initiatives through Communities United of North Arcata. And it doesn't have to be the entire budget for the whole thing. It could be a portion of it. I should have started with this. It's plain to see that all of our proposed strategies and solutions are interconnected. We know, this is really obvious, affordable housing depends on the availability of a well-educated and prepared construction and trades workforce. If we want to grow our employment bases, especially as folks start to come back from the pandemic and rehire, we have to have affordable housing. The idea that research around, say, the offshore wind impacts or the NOYO collaboratives, ocean science research initiatives, can also be a draw for tourists or for other people coming to learn from us from across the, well, I'll say across the country, but I think we can observe this happening across the world if we look at the example of the Blue Lake Rancheria's microgrid project. Leslie, Alyssa, you're welcome. We definitely heard this said over and over again, the ways in which all of these strategies can be connected to the arts. Greg, yes, you're right. Art for art's sake is important. It is important for our souls and for our sense of meaning in the world, but it's also, it can be part of our ability to represent ourselves as an appealing community to live. And we must never forget that fundamental to social change work is creation, creativity, and innovation. And so engaging artists to help us to look at issues sideways can be a really powerful way to approach a challenge that feels intractable. We heard in a number of sections about the challenge that is perennial, of course, for planners and policymakers. How can we work together across departments and agencies to demystify processes, smooth regulatory barriers? The example that came to mind was ADUs, but there are plenty of others. We saw this come up not just in the sessions that were led by folks from tribal lands, but also I noticed this coming up in other sessions as well. This idea that certain Indigenous ways of approaching community and approaching problem solving are even more relevant now than they have ever been. And what can we do to make that those approaches explicit and conscious? How can we make sure that every single conversation we have about potential growth and change includes the question, how will this impact 7 generations forward? And how would 7 generations behind us view the decisions we're making today and how we're making them? We saw this obviously with the Yurok Promised Neighborhoods project, but also with the conversations around, the impact of the work around the blue zones and the health promoting strategies is not going to bear fruit immediately, but it is going to bear fruit for generations to come. And certainly the idea of talking from day one, even before we have a contractor for the offshore wind facility, about what it's going to be like when it's time to decommission it. And then 2 more. We saw a reminder in a few conversations that when we're talking about equity and when we're talking about historically excluded communities, it is very convenient and casual to use the term BIPOC, say Black, Indigenous, and people of color, but that does not actually represent anybody's lived reality. It's a term of art. So it's really important for us to remember when we say we have a commitment to equity and belonging, what we're actually doing then is making sure that each individual group is having the opportunity to be accepted and engaged as they want to be engaged, differently from others. And then we heard this a couple of other times, and I've been hearing this for decades myself, especially in community change work. This has got to be a no big BS process. We are the inheritors of generations of harm and exploitation. And we have to be honest about that. We can't paint a pretty picture about it because the people who were impacted have descendants who are still impacted. And so what can we do to make room in our commitment to equity and economic renewal and growth and development for conversations that take time, that go deep, and that are sometimes painfully honest? Trust has been broken with many communities. And I mean it when I say rebuilding trust is a sacred act. And then finally, we talk about how we want people to think and act differently. And we forget sometimes that asking them or educating them is not actually, the research show is not actually how people change. You can change behavior by changing the lived and felt design of products and communities around folks. So changing physical spaces, changing the way people access services, changing the way conversations are held, like physically held, can sometimes make it a really powerful difference in how people envision a particular issue. So these are by no means the only things that were threads woven through our conversations, but there are a few that I noticed, and I'm happy to share this. What I'm really interested in is the segue to Susan Seaman, who is going to offer our call to action and our inspiration for how to use everything that we have learned and done today and yesterday in the California Economic Resilience Fund process that comes, we hope, very, very soon. Susan.
Thank you so much. I wish I had a better call to action because we're still working on what that planning process is going to be, and we have to wait until we get notice. But what I would like to encourage everybody to do, and I should have gotten that email down, is email Amanda and I'm just going to check. I'm going to put her email in in the chat here. She is with CCRP. The SURF process, as I mentioned at the beginning, AEDC is the fiscal sponsor. California Center for Rural Policy is the convener, and they are the keeper of the one in complete list of people that we're going to reach out to as soon as we find out that we get the grant and as soon as we start the planning process. All of the stuff that we talked here today, I talked about in the last 2 days, is very much aligned with what we are going to be talking about with SURF. So this email, I'm going to say it again, aph38@humboldt.edu, which is in there, that belongs to Amanda Hickey. And she is our main contact there at CCRP. If you will just send her an email, say, I want to be on the SURF email list, and we will communicate with you as soon as we get word. And please participate in any way that you can to make sure that we are creating the best opportunity for our future, and the best opportunity to bring those funds in that are going to come with the, oh gosh, it is so late in the day. There's the planning grant, and then there's the one that starts with an I. It's the integration. It's not integration. Implementation. Thank you. I couldn't get integration. So the implementation grant, and there's Amanda telling me. So work on the planning. It's going to be the planning that's going to help us determine the implementation. And that's where the rubber hits the road. But the rubber will never hit the road if we don't do the planning right. So please participate. And I'm so glad Amanda is still here. And with that, I'm going to let you. I think that with that, I'm going to close the meeting unless there's anything that's left to say that I didn't say.
Just
put one more thing in their head. So
happy Friday. Many blessings to you all. We look forward to working together, all together across all 4 counties and tribal lands to make the best possible use of that $5 million. And we're getting the whole $5 million.
And what I will say is last year, that planning grant hadn't even started. And I think that this summit was really important to help start even the smallest relationships that help make that coalition building happen in the first place. So things do come from this summit. So it was a good use of your time, I hope. We're going to do great things. We'll see you all before next year, but also next year.